This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Gary Menkes rhymes with Yankees, and he is a winner, and he is a Yankees fan. Sober since 2006. His story is amazing. New York guy from Long Island, has all the stories of working on Wall Street and partying in New York City and eventually finding sobriety in the city that never sleeps, right? You think, how does somebody get sober there? Gary gives us the blueprint, and he also gives us the blueprint on a great life. He has a podcast himself now called the Begin Again Podcast. Check that out. Link will be in the show notes. But right now, check out Gary Menkes. But first, Kevin Souza. Look, I'm from the Northeast. I'm from outside of Philadelphia. I spent a couple weeks every summer, like out on Long Island, most of which I was drinking for. You know, I've been sober for the past 12 years. I know you've been sober since May of 2006.
Yeah.
But your story is so relatable for a guy like me, and I think for a lot of people who party, right? And you create the image when you tell your story. Of course, we always have that ugly bottom, and the reality is that for me, it was stuffing all this crap into like a God-sized hole or just like a black hole. But you talk about partying as being so alluring, and you spend a lot of time in New York City, which to me is that's peanut butter and jelly, man. Partying and the Big Apple. That's pretty. You piqued my interest right there.
Well, I did. And I'm glad you say that, because there's times. I feel I had an abnormal obsession or an abnormal love for partying, Pete. Like, I loved it. Again, abnormally as a young guy too. In sobriety, yes. And first of all, congratulations on 12 years, man. That's amazing. It really is. God bless you. And yes, New York City. It's funny. I grew up I grew up on Long Island in Port Washington. Went to the city all the time, especially early, jumping on the train. It was a quick train ride into New York City. And yeah, we got in trouble, but I was like, I don't want to live there. I'm more out east, Montauk, free spirit, type guy. But lo and behold, I started working in the city. An apartment opened up and I lived there. And so, yeah, and it's all, it is the city, as you know, that never sleeps. It really, never sleeps.
I appreciate when you talk about.
I did love to party when I was out there.
Yeah, I appreciate when you talk about you're living in, I guess, the West Village. You're working on Wall Street, and you're partying at night, and all day long, you're talking to yourself like, I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not going to drink tonight. And ultimately, we know how that story ends when you're in active addiction.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate so much you doing a little research, and making this such a better conversation this way, instead of having to sort of dig it all out. But, of all the stuff that I've done and all the trouble, I got in trouble, as you know, when I was younger.
I like how you say just a couple assaults.
Yeah, right. You couldn't have missed that one, right? Yeah, a couple police officers assaults in there. Yeah, couldn't miss that one. 16 years old. That was a good start to my foray into trouble.
Yeah.
But as far as alcoholism, Pete, right? And as far as being a sick young guy at the time, that was, looking back, that was maybe just as an eye opener as. Listen, if you and I are out, and like you said, all the trouble I got into at the party, like total maniac all the time, not once I started, I couldn't stop, first one in, last one home, if I made it home. But sitting at the desk as a young guy in my young 20s, staring at the screen and talking to myself all day long. I mean, like obsessively, like, I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not, and then, 12 o'clock comes around. Feel a little bit better. Maybe I was able to eat something that day. I usually, I eat some lunch. I'm still feeling a little better, but I'm still not going out. I'm still not going out. Then 4:30, and also I'll say this too. I was in a role, Pete, like if I was in a role, I was in a support role. So I always wanted to get into the trading desk and be a trader. And, that's kind of where the action was. And I was there with the action, but I was supporting these guys. So you hear a lot of stories, especially in my industry, where people have found success in whatever, on Wall Street. And then they got, then that lifestyle took them. Pete, I showed up there this way. Like I'm not one of the guys that, Wall Street got a hold of me and then, it took off. No, I was there. In fact, I was like, I could party more than harder than all these guys put together. Like, let me up there. Let's go. Like, again, it's sick thinking talking about it now. But that time sitting at my desk, like you said, and I said all day long, and that same day talking to myself, and this wasn't a one-off. This was all the time.
Well, how did you get there, Gary? How did that first drink or drug hit your brain? And now you look back with 20/20 vision on it and you see, okay, I definitely was different. Or did you know at the time, oh, wow, this feels so good. It was too good to be true for me.
For me, it was more gradual. I have a sort of late birthday. I don't know. My birthday's in the middle. My birthday's in July. A lot of my buddies, I say that just because they were older. Like they got left back because of their birthdays, not because of their smarts. But most of my buddies are a year older for the most part. And so they're always ahead of me. And so if you measured me in 8th grade or 9th grade, I was probably kind of right there with them, maybe a little more, but I progressively got worse and worse and worse and progressively, loved what I was doing. Like I was young, high school, and I loved the movie Cocktail. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bartend and I'm going to party all night and I'm going to talk to all the girls. I'm going to make a ton of money. I mean, that's what I want to do. And then I had this beautiful idea where any young man could aspire to is I'm going to bartend in Montauk in the summers. I'm going to go down to Key West in the winters. I'm going to bartend down there. And that's going to be my life. And I say that now, I have a son now. I have a 9-year-old son. Like if he said that, I'd be like, what, where did I fail? What happened? Again, I say this a lot too. You probably heard it. Like I recently turned 50 years old. Like I have more dreams and aspirations and goals now than I ever have before. But to answer your question, I'm one of those that I believe there is that imaginary line that you cross and you can't come back. Now, I crossed it early. I can't put a finger on that stuff hit my veins, hit my belly, and hit my bloodstream, hit my mind. And I was, I didn't want to stop. I can't put on that exact statement, but I can at that exact time. But I can tell you, I'm the type of guy that if I went out for one beer, I'm going to close that bar.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I said that I did all of that internal fighting for so long, but I gradually got there. Yes, I got into trouble as a 16-year-old. I was a little bit of a one-off, though. I snuck into the bars the night before Thanksgiving. Huge night in Long Island, probably in Philly too, biggest night of the year. I was with my older cousins all day. They were talking about, Finn McCool's, which was the bar that the 86 Mets went to.
Yes, dude, I just read a book, the Jeff Pearlman book for the second time, and they talk about Finn McCool's. That's the only time I've heard of it, so you go hang there.
Yeah, that's where I got into trouble. That's where it happened, that bar. So that's why I'm a Yankee fan. But if I ever ran into David Cohen, I'd have to tell him that story, because he was always there, which I love Cohen. I think he's the best at what he does right now, and I just love him anyway. But I'm getting off topic here. I feel like I eventually, I passed the line, but I also passed that imaginary line very young, Pete.
When did it start to run interference in your life?
Past it.
When did it start? When did alcohol or drugs start to run interference in your life? Where you start to see, for me, it was as early as high school where my goals totally started to change because of my number one goal was to feel some kind of way because of substance. And I look back now and I see, damn, was there stuff that you sacrificed for alcohol and drugs?
Yeah, looking back, yes. And that's a great question too, because I haven't been posed that question really. But I'd say, in 8th grade, 9th grade. 8th grade is when I really started getting a lot of trouble. And even though I was a wise guy and even younger before that, but 8th grade, I started getting a lot of trouble in school. I'm just being honest. It sounds weird to say this, but when I was in grade school, I was I was one of the smartest kids in the whole district. They would put me in like these smart classes with three other guys. No, three other girls, two girls and one guy actually. And dude, by the time I graduated high school, like I barely graduated. I stopped going to school. I mean, I went to school, but I stopped doing homework. Like I was this guy that I was like, I'm not going to bring books home ever. So I was pretty athletic too. I love sports, love baseball. That was my real love, but I love basketball too. And like, it's funny you say that. I was just thinking about this literally a couple of days ago. I went out for JV basketball in ninth grade. I made the team and I quit as soon as I made the team. I went back just to the park and played to the park all the time. And then 10th grade did the same thing. They're like, Gary, like you quit last year. Like you can't do this again. I was like, I'm not, I'm not. And I did the same thing. I made the team and I quit again. And I don't even know why, probably because I think my problems were starting to, like you said, interfere with my life. I say that too. And I have a little resentment towards my parents a little bit. Like he always had this thing like, dude, if you helped them a little bit, like if you pushed them, but there was no pushing me also. I was I guess trouble. I don't know. My wife have a different aspect on that as far as they go, but she loves them too.
Was there alcoholism in your family? Your father, any siblings?
Wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, was there alcoholism in your family?
So when I was young, I had a very active father, and active, more drugs. Like I saw stuff as a 7, 8, 9-year-old that most young kids aren't supposed to be seeing. Cut cocaine straws where I'm grabbing a spoon from my Cheerios and bags of weed up in that cabinet and rough and tumble dudes in and out of the house fairly often. I guess, I don't know, my house seemed to be like kind of the house. Now my mom doesn't touch the stuff. She's one of 10 though. She has 7 brothers, 2 sisters. She's the second oldest of 10. And when I tell you I have the 7 greatest uncles in the world, I have the 7 greatest uncles in the world. But they're Irish Catholics and drinking's part of their life. It is. And so I had this, even young, and I'm the first grandchild. So just to kind of paint the picture of where I fit in, like my mom's youngest brother is only 10 years older than I am. And he's my best friend. I was his best man at his wedding. He was my best man at my wedding. And, I think that story is not too, I think it's kind of common, I guess, in big Irish families, but, so drinking was just part of it. And I like young, I was like, I can't wait to hang out with these guys. I can't wait to be able to drink. And like, family parties younger, I started sneaking stuff and it was okay. I don't even think I had to sneak. But my mom, she went through her own story. Like she wouldn't tell it to anyone. I don't know it all, but my grandfather, God love him, he was an amazing man. He was a very sick alcoholic, and all of them went through their own stuff. So everyone had their eye on me. I bring that all up because everyone had their eye on me, even at a young age. Like they could see, they're like, you're okay now. You're young, but you get a little older and you're still doing this stuff. You're going to have a problem. Like we have a problem in this family. Like it runs in the family. And I was like, okay, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it,
Same exact thing. Same exact thing, Gary. My mom was always on my ass because it was all in my dad's family, up and down. So she could see every time she would catch me, and this is like, I was from a Catholic family. My mom's Italian. My dad was like a whole bunch of shit, English, Scottish, Portuguese. But but my mom, the old Italian, the Italian mom would be like, like it was clutching her pearls when she saw that I had a couple beers because, I was in 8th grade and she knew where the train was going. Like you said, like constantly had her eye on me. And, and it was just like, it was just part of the business for me, right? The business of being an alcoholic. It was like, okay, well, this just comes with the territory. That was one more hurdle or obstacle I was going to have to go over or around or through to get to alcohol or drugs. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned about starting to get older. What happens for you after high school? You barely get through high school. You're partying a little bit. Did you go right to bartending or did you go Wall Street first?
So this is, just a perfect example also, or I guess just to follow where I was saying too, it ties in perfectly. Like I said, I wasn't a dummy. I was a smart kid early on. I drove people nuts. I drove teachers nuts as I got older, but I didn't apply to one college. I did take the SATs. I didn't apply to one college. My baseball coach was like, there was a couple of teams calling me. He put in I was okay. I had a better glove than a bat, but I was young. I loved it. Even to this day, I sit and watch it like, man, I wish I was out there taking.
Who was compare yourself to a major league player, past or present, the type of game you had?
Well, the kind of internal joke I always have with myself is Jeter, because he was born 6 days before me.
Oh,
man, if I was born, I think he's 26th of June. I'm like, if I was born on the 25th, maybe the stars would have hit me. But I wasn't. I was very slow. I was more like who's a good glove? Maybe Omar Vizquel-ish.
Okay.
Maybe that's going a little. Maybe even Wayne Tollison, more like good glove. Had a hard time with the bat.
Yeah.
Always trying to figure it out. Yeah.
So you have a couple colleges that are looking at you, but you don't even apply to college. So there goes that. That's pride.
And I go and I enroll in Nassau Community College, and everyone kind of assumed I would go talk to the coach and go there and maybe play there. And I went to Nassau, but when I tell you I enrolled, I drove to the parking lot. There was no place to park. I went home. Like I just didn't do school. I was a knucklehead. I really was, and. So I went to Nassau my first year. That spring break, me and a couple of buddies go down to Key West, Florida, and I love Key West, like we were talking about earlier. I'm like, whoa, this
like
place
Cocktail
is on fire. Yeah, like Cocktail. So like a true sick alcoholic, without knowing it at the time, me and one other guy moved there a few months after that. And so I spent graduated in 92, 93. I went there in spring. 94, I spent a year in Key West. And I was working at a resort. I wasn't bartending there. I wasn't even 21 yet. I had to sneak in to get all the bars all the time, which is difficult down there. So, but Key West, just catapulted my everything. First time I was out on my own, first time I was really free, first time I had an apartment, again, I had a day off. I'm like, cool, I'm going to go sit at the pool with a 12-pack and these new things called ice beers. They have double the alcohol. I'm like, cool, that sounds like a great idea. Or these other stupid things we do, Again, I chalk some of this up as being a kid, and that is it. My kid story is a little different than most people I know. Most people were doing this in, a college and institution, at least getting a degree, and I'm not. And so anyway, I come back home after that year, and then I start bartending. I want to get into bartending. And so I have a couple of jobs on Long Island. I spent a summer out in Montauk, total pedal to the metal. There's still, I was probably the best summer job I could ever have.
Yeah.
I had to get there at 11 in the morning. It was a marina. It was packed, make a ton of money, and I'm off at 8 o'clock. And then I go out all night.
Look, nobody said it wasn't fun for a little while. And or at least we're not saying that. And I found the fun in recovery and that magic in recovery that I found in alcohol and drugs, right? Because you're talking about summertime, working on a marina, bartending, it sounds like a pretty good deal.
I love it. I did love it. And I love how you just said that you found that joy in sobriety, because when I first got sober, I thought my life was over.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, little did I know.
Take me through your story. Take me through your story as you started to were there drugs involved when now on Long Island, Montauk, and you're talking about the Keys, and then how does that play into you eventually hitting bottom? Where you go to rehab at 26, but you still aren't quite ready to get it.
Right. So yes, I spent the summers in Montauk to the Key West. I started bartending. I'm back now at Port Washington, and I'm in a local town bar. And a guy comes in, and is like, "You got to come work for me. I work on Wall Street. Let's go." And I have no college degree. I'm just bartending, and I'm like, "Wow, maybe this is something." So long story short, I take the guy. I call the guy. He's like, come work for me. It's some chop shop. Again, I didn't even know what that meant. fraudulent, I guess, chop shop in the middle of Long Island. And I go there and I could tell like these guys are, there's something not right with these guys. But I did have the wherewithal that, they could sponsor me. I can get my license. So I took my Series 7, passed my Series 7. And I guess they knew. I mean, they pulled me into like, listen, if you pass your test, they said this to me. I don't know why I've shared this, but they're like, if you pass your test and you don't come back here, we're going to be at your house with baseball bats. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, all right, well, you have my address. Like, you know where I live. I was like, I hope you come. Like, let's, like that's our way. That was, different. I'm a little more calmer these days. But so I passed my test. I did. I got my Series 7 and I started dating this amazing girl who was way just out of my league. Amazing girl. Her brother was doing really well at a real Wall Street firm, Solomon Smith Barney.
Oh, yeah.
And so she said, you got to talk to him. Talk to him. He's a great guy. And he got my foot in the door. And that was February of 2001. So I get an entry level, support level job, 2001, Solomon Smith Barney. Like I said, I'm supporting these traders, these sales traders, and this is really where it's at, And so the office is 390 Greenwich Street, which if you go on the map is about, half a mile north of the World Trade Center. And so September 11th of 2001, I'm outside smoking a butt like I always did. I was a big smoker and, the planes crashed. The planes hit, right? And so I'm right down there for September 11th. We can do a whole episode on that day. I won't take you step by step on that one, but that for sure changed me at the time. Like Pete, I used to at least think I wanted to have a family, and bring kids into this world. And I was like, I'm not bringing kids into this world. It's a bad way. And I really went dark. And I really started, maybe it wasn't fun. I don't think I'm blaming it on September 11th, but I just tie that time into.
Well, I wasn't. I lived in Boston during September 11th, but I moved back to the city shortly after September 11th. And as an alcoholic and a drug addict, I wasn't affected like you were, being there blocks away, smoking a cigarette, fucking witnessing it. But I did. I sort of like. When I went back there, I enjoyed the atmosphere. That because New York City, I'd lived there before 9/11, and it was like so fun and kind of lighter. Then it was heavier, but there was still the substance. Everybody had an excuse to drink all the time, and you didn't have to explain yourself. If you were a jamoke like me who was just in it for the party, or somebody like you who actually might have had trauma from it, right? The opportunity to drink and do drugs is always going to be in New York, but boy, it was really on steroids at that point.
It was, and I'm just thinking as you're talking about. The atmosphere down there for so long, right? And I worked down there. I loved too. I loved the pride, and I loved the inspiration. I loved that. But I started just to give you an idea. Like we'd go out, a bunch of guys would go out, and I would just Irish exit and leave, just go by myself. I feel like there was a parade or a service I feel like for an entire year. Maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it was longer, but I had the bagpipes in the back of my head. That was like an entire year. And I was just I went dark. I went really, really dark.
Did you stay working?
That was obviously September, I started not showing up for work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then talk to me about that. Because you did that number where I did the same thing, dude. Like you go out for drinks with people you're working with, and you just disappear. You start doing coke, and you start and you're gone for days. Like, take us through that.
Yeah. So started going AWOL. I started going on real long benders, and so I went out on a Thursday night in April, after September 11th. So whatever. 8 months later or so. And again, now it's like pedal to the metal, like everything I'm saying. And, I go out with guys from work, and again, they took me out cause they knew I like to have fun. Again, I'm not out there on their desk yet. Right. And so do what I always do, start getting after it, and boom, I bolt on my own, go on I love to be alone. I love to be in dark places. I don't show up for work Friday. I don't call anybody. I know I'm a little bit in trouble because I'm just on this bender, and I go all out Saturday, all day Sunday, Monday. I think I'm just so afraid of what's going to happen that I keep going, right? And so I get a phone call. I get an answer. There's an answer machine on Tuesday. So now I miss Friday, Monday, Tuesday at work. And this is when I get a message, and it says, Gary, you there? I didn't answer the phone. Actually, take that back. There's a knock on my door. Sorry, Pete. There's a knock because they called first. I think Monday. Tuesday, there's a knock on my door, and it's like I'm being served, kind of, not by an attorney, but I open it. It's a FedEx overnight, and it says, Gary, if you're alive, you need to contact us. Otherwise, your position is going to be terminated. And so I picked up the phone. I had it in my head, Pete, somewhere. Someone planted the seed. I don't know. I knew this. If you go to rehab, they can't fire you just yet. And now I say that, listen, I clearly had a problem. Yes, dry goods. I fell in love with ecstasy for a while. I was also the type of guy that I didn't have the guy's number, because of stuff I saw when I was a kid. Like I hated cocaine. I hated it, but once I found it, it let me drink more. And so I loved it, but I wouldn't call the guy, but I would be like, hey, you call him right now. And so I was the guy that they'd bring it, and I would kind of do it all. And be like, all right, let's go. Let's, bring it on, call them back, we're done, call them back. They're even like I said, these guys are they're not angels, right? They know how to have fun. Some of them can have a seat in our room. But I was just a different level. But I called them, Pete, and I said, I'm alive. And I said, I have a problem with drinking. And I said, I'm looking for help right now I need to go to a rehab. And so that same girlfriend came over, and she did some research. She found a bed for me upstate New York. It's called the Miracle on the Mountain, St. Christopher's, which is an incredible place. And I went there for 30 days. I'm not proud of what I'm about to say, but I went there for 30 days in April, and I kind of lied right through my teeth. And I'm like, but I say
how did you lie?
What's that?
How did you lie?
How did I lie? How bad are you? I'm not that bad. I just, been on a bad spree.
I've been there. You're running a PR campaign when you should be getting sober. It's like, what are we doing?
I'm sitting here like, what am I doing here? What did you do to yourself, man? How are you going to get out of this one, right? And I'm like, now, what are you supposed to do now? And now also I kind of threw this, this flag up saying, hey, by the everyone, I have a problem now. I'm in the problem group now, right? But I do remember, and if you heard some of my past episodes, I can remember it clear as day. I had to go to my first AA meeting when I first got there, and I'm sitting in a circle. Everyone's coming around. It's the first time I had to raise my hand and say, I'm Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. And I thought my life was over, Pete. I thought my life was over. And little did I know, it was just beginning, even though I had some trouble before I really got it. So that's 2002. My sobriety date, like you said, is May 13th, 2006. So those 4 years of being in and out of the rooms are a very, very difficult place to be.
How did you get back in 2006?
So I go to this rehab 2002, stay up there for 30 days, come home. I don't even put 90 days together.
Let me ask you this. Were you the kind of drunk that would you go in and out all the time, or did you just say, I'm going to drink again, and did you go back out for years at a time?
I would get clips. I never ever put 90 days together though. Okay. That's kind of my barometer until September, until 2006. So my first 90 days is also my full blown, 18 plus years. So I was in and out, and I was just like I would alienate people close to me, family, my best friends. And I was just like, I don't care what team you're on. This is who I am. You're either on this team or you're off. And I really don't care. This is what I'm doing. And this is what I did to everyone, because I had dear friends like, Gary, what are you doing, man? Come on. How could you do this again? Whoa, what happened? There we go. We had a lot of contention with loved ones, Pete. And I'm happy to share with you. I have a better relationship with every single one of those people today. So 2006, I'm sitting in my apartment on West 12th Street, and I've had way worse bottoms, but I'm sitting my apartment, the studio apartment, a great apartment. It's I say it's a Tuesday because it was such a event night. Maybe it was a Thursday. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I'm sitting in there, drunk as a skunk, dry goods, the shades drawn. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this. And I said earlier, my mom's one of 10 and the first grandchild. They have like 21, 22 younger cousins. And I remember thinking, like, is this what you want them to see is okay? Is this what you want them to look up to? Because, again, if I'm being honest, and I am, like, they looked up to me just like I looked up to my older cousins and older uncles. They looked up to me. Oh, look at he works on Wall Street. He's not, he plays sports, whatever. So it was kind of easy. I would look up to someone like that too. And I was overcome with it. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm sure I said the words, please help. And I was never in those 4 years, like we just said, I was in and out. It dawned on me at some point in there that, all right, there'll be a time I'm going to have to stop drinking. I mean, that's clear, right? But I'm not going back to those guys. I'm not going back in those rooms. I'll figure this out myself. That's also part of my problem. Everything I do to this day, like if you tell me, oh, go this way, I'm going to look the other way just because that's kind of how I'm wired. And I need to accept it, I guess. And I need to laugh about it now. My wife picks, she points it out all the time. She's
and by the way, your wife is the same woman, right, who helped you get the treatment.
That amazing girlfriend is my wife. She's upstairs right now. Yes.
So how the hell did you keep that together?
We just had our 16-year anniversary.
How did you keep that together?
I don't know. That's all her. Like I blew it. I blew it so many times over. Her family, who I'm so close with today, like my mother-in-law is like second mom to me. Like we are so close. Her brothers and sisters, so close with all of them. My nieces. She just kind of hung in there, and this time, 2006, we were apart, and I had not drank in like, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And I didn't call her just like for the hope I get her back. I was just like, I just want to tell her like, hey, I just want you to know it's been a couple of weeks. I haven't had a drink. I've been going to AA. It's a little, I don't know, I feel a little different. And I did feel different this time. I don't know why. But she like came over right away and we started, we stayed together from there. So there was a lot of on and offs, but we never strayed too far. She always believed in me though, Pete. She really did, even when I didn't believe in myself. And when, she was also the one that told me like, Gary, you have these, you say you want to be this person and you're this type of person, but your actions are speaking louder than your words right now. And, that smacked me right in the face. And then, you know what? It was the truth.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up before we get back into the recovery, I wanted to ask you, how much shame did you have when you would, because you talk about your father and growing up in that environment with a lot of the drugs and stuff, and you didn't have the number of the dealer, but you would always find a way to get it when you wanted to, or when that switch gets flipped. Problem. Was there a lot of shame, like after you did do it, that led to more drinking?
Yeah, there was a ton of shame, a ton of low self-esteem. Like I felt like I was a piece of shit all the time. She's a piece of garbage, all the time. And I say that I didn't realize it though. It was just who I was, and I didn't get to like really articulate that within myself and how that's so wrong, until I got into recovery, until I started going through the steps, and I just went through that fourth step. That stuff about my dad, like I never told a soul. I never told one person my whole entire life, but I was always gonna, like I always had it like in my back pocket, and it grew this massive chip on my shoulder that I kind of carried my whole entire life. Yeah. And so, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of fear, people knowing what's going on in that house, when behind closed doors. I'd run into guys when I was young, like, hey man, like I saw your dad last night, like, again, I was young, right? I still remember who those guys are. I was like, one day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get that guy. I'm going to beat him up. Like, not normal thoughts for, a 10, 12-year-old kid, right? But you can probably relate to, right? Like, I don't know, all this stuff but it was all inside. I didn't share it with one person.
How'd you get it out? How'd you get, how did you finally work a program where you were able to, because they talk about recovery, and I go to a meeting here in Texas where a guy talks about, this program is about getting rid of stuff. And how did you get rid of all that shit that kept you drunk and high for so long?
Yeah, it was It took me a while. It took me a little while, because when I came in this the final time, May of 2006, I just came in, Pete, to stop drinking. I was like, I can't drink anymore. I'm just here to not drink. And for the first time, I realized my way is not working. So I'm going to go in there, and some stranger, comes up to me and gives me his number and tells me to call him. And every instinct in my body is to tell you and your number to go somewhere else. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time. And so I started sitting in the front. I started raising my hand. I just started taking the suggestions that everyone told me to do. And you want to talk about New York City? My favorite thing, bar none, not even close, about New York City, it's the sobriety. When that year, 2006 or 2000, those couple of years, when all I had to do, go to work and go to a meeting, when they give you the pamphlets, the West Philly, it was great, but I didn't know it, right? So I'm just there to not drink. But I feel different. And I feel now, again, looking back, I think that I felt different because of that episode that I had all alone in my apartment when I said, I need help. I don't want to do this anymore. The other times it's like, all right, I can't do this. I'm losing. This time it was me. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so, I went through this. I got a sponsor, just like they told me to do. I got him in Montauk, actually. That's another funny story, but I found him in Montauk. And so I still went in on a house that summer when I never should have been near that place, because, I was like this, everyone knew me. I was a total maniac out there. But
you stayed sober.
I went through the steps. I'm sorry, what's that?
You stayed sober this summer. You're talking about.
I stayed sober, but that was a difficult summer. But I was in meet. I'll tell it quick. It's a great story, actually. I'm sober, I don't know, a couple months, right? May, June, July, probably before 4th of July, something like that, early summer. And I'm walking around town, from the beach, and there's people yelling at me from inside, the bars, Shagwan, Gary, hey, what do you get in here, man? You want me a beer? And I was like, I'm not going to make it. I got a house full of my old best buddies who were getting after it, like I used to. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. And there was a meeting in town that night. And I went to that meeting, and this guy spoke. And again, visions of grandeur. I feel like there was hundreds of people in there. And it was a big meeting.
Yeah.
Anyway, he spoke, and I just stood up. I was like, my name's Gary. I'm an alcoholic. I'm not going to make it, and I need your help. And he's like, okay, all right, sit down. We'll come get you after the meeting. Let's finish the meeting. And I was like, thank you. And, so he came, and he had a crew with him, and they talked to me after, and he's, if you get squirrely, you got to call me. They told me the whole thing. And I remember he told me, Pete, he's like, now don't worry, well, I'm going to get you to not drink. And I was like, what'd you say? I got mad. I was like, do you know who you're talking to? I'm like, I've been fighting this for so long. Don't tell me you're going to get me. He's like, no, don't worry. It's going to be okay. And I was like, fine. I was mad. He goes, all you have to do is, if you're squirrely, something happens tonight, you got to call me tonight. If not, you have to call me tomorrow. I was like, fine. I took the number and walked away. And so I made it through that night. It was a rough night just because the house was crazy. And I called him the next morning at 8 o'clock, and he's like, man, we were all praying that you were going to call. He's like, come over. And so I went over, and I was like, I don't know what to do. He's like, don't worry, here's the book. He gave me a big book. We went, he became my sponsor. I went through the steps with him, but that's the first time, to answer, I think your question was, I started putting this stuff out. I started writing this stuff down. And that stuff about my dad, who I love my dad. I do. I love my dad. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but I have a great relationship with him right now. And it's because of the steps of alcohol. It's because of my recovery. It's because of amends that I made, even though my whole life I was like, people need to make amends to me, and the freedom in all of it, the real true freedom, especially in that relationship with my dad, was when I made the amends to him about, sorry, what I put you through. There was a time I called him out. I acted out in front of all of his buddies at him, and I broke down crying, which I don't do very often. I really sobbed, and everything is just, we're on the level now. There's no BS between us anymore. But to answer your question is, that's how I did the steps. I did what was told. I wrote them all down and did a thorough fourth step, and I need things so figured out sometimes, Pete, that I was like resentment. I had to Google it 1,000 different times. Of what does it really mean? And the guy said, just write down every time you've been pissed off at someone. I was like, or something. I was like, oh, that? Oh, I was like, okay, I'll see you in about a month. Yeah, I can do that. Right. So I came back and I wrote down all the stuff. I went through the steps. I wrote the steps down, and it was the first time, besides my girlfriend, who is my wife now, that I shared this about my dad. And even up until that point, I was like, I'm ratting him out. I don't know if I can do this, and they said, you got to be fearless, and you got to be thorough, and you got to be honest. And I shared it, and I did my fifth step. And, it's been a journey ever since. There's been some ups and downs. That's how sobriety can be, right? It's not this like straight line. Well, at least at the time, straight line to this beautiful life. But when you zoom out, right, Pete,
yes.
You look like, man, look at where I was 12 years ago and look where I am today. Or look,
you're like a plane that's flying through like a storm, right? And you go up and down, but you're in the air,
Yeah.
and eventually you get through all that shit. And then there's another one and you get through it, but you're a better pilot having gotten through that stuff. What do you say to the guy? Because I can tell I'm talking to you now and you're just like, you're free as a bird. You're happy. You're carrying this message. But you also said, the moment when you were 26 in rehab and you said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm Gary. I'm an alcoholic. You thought your life was over. Look, man, I'm not calling anybody out, and who knows if they'll listen to this. But I got a lot of buddies who are, whether they work on Wall Street or they live in the city or they go to Montauk to celebrate over the summer. I know these. I know that because I lived it, and so did you. That they think like it would be doomsday without alcohol in those places, right? But you seem to have found a beautiful way to navigate it. What do you say to guys like that? Because you lived in the city for a long time after you got sober. You went to Montauk for a long time after you got sober. You had wonderful, beautiful times that actually you can remember and where you were a contributing member to the magic. How do you talk to a young guy that comes behind you, or just a guy our age that comes behind you and is like, dude, there's no way I can do that. It won't be any fun, or I can't live that way.
Yeah, well, I just always come from first of all, everyone knows that I'm sober. I don't stand on the top of the, rooftops, if you will, but I guess in a way, maybe I do now, I have my own podcast and stuff, but everyone knows that I'm sober. And even my guy, buddies in the industry in Wall Street, guys that run desks, I'm always like, hey, by the way, if anyone's ever having some trouble, who to call. I'm like, you did? Yeah, of course. And so I've kind of in a way, and again, there's a bunch of us in our industry too that are sober. So there's a ton of us. I found a meeting actually just at 6 o'clock in the morning. They call it morning call in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, which became my home group. And it was a bunch of Wall Street guys. And funny, there was like 8 guys from my firm there, which is hilarious. That's a whole nother story. But, I think what's the saying? It's promote. What's the word?
It's attraction.
Attraction, right?
Promotion by attraction.
Over promotion, right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So nothing makes me happy when I get those questions, because when they ask that, like, how do you do that? They're asking about themselves mostly, and so I just say, hey, man, my life's a complete 180 from where it was, and I'm also a guy, I love the band Fish, for example. I've seen Fish 50 times. I still go see them.
Yeah.
I'm able to do that. I wasn't able to do that year 1 or year 2 or year 3. It took me a while to really, I believe that, if you're going to go to a hair barber, you're going to get a haircut eventually. So I have to have my sobriety front and center, and I need to have my defenses up, if you will. But nothing, when people ask, and there's been plenty of that same group of buddies, I think there's 3 of us now that are sober.
Yeah. I've had a couple guys join the team, and, a couple dudes that are still out there that I still love and can hang with when I'm in the right frame of mind, or, the guys I'm still very close with. But yeah, it's amazing how time, I had a buddy who got sober when he was 18, and, now there's 4 of us, there's plenty of us who we love that aren't, but it's funny how that works out. Take me to, you got a lot of gratitude because of sobriety. Dude, you almost died a couple years ago because you had a heart attack. Did you see that coming? Obviously not, probably. That's a stupid question. But how you look super fit to me. What the hell happened there? And how have you used recovery to rebound from that, even from an emotional standpoint?
I can't can't thank you enough for asking that question, because it's such an important question to me personally, and I struggle with it still. So the answer is, no, I had no idea. And in fact, so I was getting my steps in the morning. Actually, it was like 5:15 in the morning, and it was like a 2-mile walk to the train. I was living in Long Island Northport at the time. We were just in a rental in between. And so I'm walking to the train in the morning, and I just have this awful heartburn. I feel like the heck is that? It's not going away, And long story short, I'm like, you know what? I can work from home. Let me just turn around. And that walk home was brutal, because I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain. Now, I still didn't think I was having what I was having. Like, wouldn't let it enter my mind. I'm like, no, wait, it's not that. It's not that. It's something else, And I get into my house, and I start almost throwing up. I'm like, oh, good, I'm going to throw up, and then I'm going to feel better, and maybe I can still make the train. This is what I'm thinking. But my wife hears me throwing up, and she's an acupuncturist. She's very smart. She's a doctor of Oriental medicine, so she knows what she's doing, thank God. And I told her what was happening. I'm like, I have pain in my chest, and she just knew. She took our kids were, my daughter, I think, was 4, and my son was 3 at the time. She put him in the back seat. I didn't even know it. And then I was like, why is my jaw hurting all of a sudden? She's like, get in the car. And she rushed me there. And, long story short, they rushed me through. I was having a widowmaker heart attack. And if you Google widowmaker, the timing of it, they don't, the chances are grim. Again, I didn't know, but he rushes me up, runs me up into the ER, and puts a stent through my leg, puts 2 stents. I had 100% blockage in my main artery. And so the first answer to your question that I know was coming after, we wanted to answer the same thing. What happened here? What happened? He's fit. Yes, I have some family. I have a lot of family disease, heart disease, but most of them, even my uncles, my grandfather, my one uncle had a heart attack, major heart attack, same age, 44. I was 44 years old when this happened. But they're more like bad cholesterol, clogged arteries, don't eat well. This wasn't what happened. And so he said, Gary, you came in here, yesterday you were a bull, and today you're not. He's like, your heart took some damage here. Like, it's gonna be a little bit. But we asked him, what happened? Is this a fluke thing? Is this my family? He's like, it's both. He's like, you could have came here yesterday, and I would have told you, go run a marathon.
Wow.
And this would have happened to you. Yeah, this is what he said to me. So, coming back after that, the recovery wasn't that long. I was in hospital a few days, and but let me tell you, I used the tools that I used in recovery to recover, in essence, mentally from the widowmaker. Like, I was in such fear, and I'll still have it sometimes, to be honest with you. But like, I couldn't even look at a family picture of the 4 of us, because I'd be like, these kids are going to grow up without a dad. Come on, man. And so we work through fear so much in sobriety and in our recovery. The word fear comes up all the time, right? And I've learned in recovery, I could put fear on. And again, before I got here, I thought I wasn't afraid of anything. If you saw me, you'd probably be like, that guy's not afraid of anything,
Yeah.
But truth is, I learned that I was afraid of everything. I'm afraid of what Pete's going to think of me. I'm afraid of what that person's going to say. I'm afraid of what this accountant's going to, but I've learned in recovery, like, to turn this stuff over. But I had to kind of redo all of that after the widowmaker, because I was like, I feel something in my heart, like, or my chest, or maybe it's my mind telling me, like, what's going on? Like, am I not going to make it? And so, like, the one day at a time, and to have gratitude for this day. It's funny, my prayers, I'll tell you, some of my prayers in the morning are all built around gratitude. And they were the same prayers before, but it's a little more like, thank you for this day. And so some of the biggest problems I've had quickly, I guess, with it is, and I've worked through this with my sponsor, with other people that have had similar things. I'm like, I had this really scary event, right? And I almost didn't make it, but here I am 6 months later, and I'm beeping at someone because, they cut me off, or maybe they didn't even cut me off. You know what I mean? Like, what happened? I should be on this just like, hey, I'm playing with house money kind of attitude and lifestyle, if you will. Like, everything is just good. And the answer to that is, I'm a human being, and I'm also a human being with a lot of muscle memory of 40 plus years of stuff that I'm still working through. Right. So, but I had this conflict, and I'd be so upset with myself, because why am I letting anything affect me? And the truth is, like I said, I'm a human. I'm also a sick human being, but all these tools, they're all tied in. And just like, I'm sure, if you've gone through stuff, right, and you raise your hand, maybe you don't want to share it, you raise your hand and tell them what's going on. Someone comes up to you, hey man, same thing happened to me. How did you do it? And this is going to happen. You might feel guilty. You might feel, what's it called? Survivor's remorse, which is a term I never heard of, but all the stuff, practicing gratitude, fear, the prayers, it's like, what's that? It's a poem, yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery.
Yeah.
Stay in the present today. And that's why it's called a gift. Today is a gift.
Well, so amazing stuff, by the way. What moved you to start the Begin Again podcast? Because you're a successful guy. And I know a little bit about this because this is one of the things I could connect with you on. That's one of the reasons I started my podcast, was because when I was, before I got sober, and I was really struggling, I could dip into, if a celebrity or an athlete or somebody shared their story about recovery, like a Chris Mullen, I would be like, wow, like this is so amazing. I remember I read the Chris Mullen article in Sports Illustrated when I was a kid. I didn't even know I was an alcoholic yet. And I was like, This guy's sober. And those were like little nuggets that were planted along the way that I kind of sought when I needed help to stop myself. So I guess I'm answering the question. That's what moved me to do it. What moved you?
So the actual podcast is, I'm not exactly sure, but I have some of the same similar nuggets that you had. That girlfriend, who's my wife at the time, we'll mention her again, she had given me a book back in 2006 called Courage to Change. And the book was all these, celebrities, athletes, people in recovery that they're thriving now. Like I remember Pete Townsend, from the Who, for some reason, like he jumped out. I always remember that name. And so, I'm always looking for like next chapter stuff, like what's, and again, I'm able to work from home. I blessed and do well. Right. But I'm always like, what's next? I always want to do, I always want to use my head, and I want to be a business owner, and now I'm working on other stuff. But, somehow, my wife has heard every kind of crazy idea, coffee companies, like all this silly kind of, or not silly, entrepreneurial stuff. Right. And I was in a group of people, and they all had a podcast, mostly around business. And they're like, you'd be great at a podcast. I'm like, well, what would I talk about? I'm like, sports is the first thing that came up. I'm like, but there's a million of those. So like, that's a little crowded to me, at least at the time. Right. And what else do I love to talk? I love to talk about the mindset of a champion. That's why you have Tom Brady behind there. Right. And I'm a Jet fan, but man, Tom Brady, he's one of the GOATs. But because again, the thing I love about Tom Brady is not his physical attributes and the touchdowns he passes, his mindset. And now when he's doing a lot of content now. Right. And like, that's why I love Michael Jordan. I'm a Knicks fan that loves Michael Jordan because of his mindset and his work ethic. Kobe Bryant, work ethic, mindset. So I was like, maybe I could talk about that. But, and it just kind of dawned on me, like, what do you love? What do you love? Who could you talk to any day about? And I was like, I talk to someone about mindset any day. And I was like, well, I love my, sobriety. I could talk about that maybe. And then as soon as that seed was kind of planted, like it just kind of caught fire. And then I wrote out this mission statement for it. And there's a chapter in I forget what chapter, the guy says, we get to begin again. And I related to that so much, I got to begin again. It's like a complete new lease on life here. And so I wrote out this mission statement for it. And I wrote it down and I put it on a text to my wife. I'm like, what is she going to say to this one? I'm like, holy cow. And so I texted it to her, and she's like, Gary, honestly, stop everything else you're doing. This is so you. Like I said earlier, like I always wanted, people, come to me. Like, you guys know them. So even the ones that are out there, if you ever need some help, just give me a shout. And so I went with it, and, I attacked it. Like, I didn't know anything about media. I don't know anything about the microphone. this Rodecaster. I don't know if it's good. The camera, there's so much other stuff I need to learn, but I just did it. Like I just told myself, Pete, that, you know what, episode 10 is going to be better than episode 1. And it just came from, I can talk to this. I love talking to you about this.
Yeah.
Like the text, we were texting like really quick. I was like, man, I can't wait to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
You know, like I enjoy doing this. And now I love it. And it very quickly, like really quickly became way bigger than what I wrote on paper or any ideas I had. Like I realized that like, this is bigger than me. And it's exactly what you had said. And why I mentioned that book is, you know, when I see and walk around, you know, New York City, those days and seeing some of these people in person it helped me. It did. It helped me, you know, and I'm the type of guy, like if I see, you know, Bradley Cooper in a movie, I'm like, yeah, he's one of our
totally.
guys, you know?
Yeah.
You know, he's one of us. So it helps, you know, and then I'm also sitting in meetings, and a lot of meetings went to Zoom because of obviously COVID and stuff. I'm like, you know, more people than the 30 or 50 or, you know, people in this room can probably benefit to hear some of this stuff. And I say that also, you know, everyone knows AA is where I got sober. That's what saved my life.
Me too.
But I don't care how you got here or what your journey is. Like, I'm not here to tell you one way or the other. Just if you have to get here and you're here, like, awesome, man.
Let's hear how you did it, because it's because this thing will kill you. All right, if people want to hear more of Gary, of course they can listen to the Begin Again podcast. Anything else that you want to drop on us before we get out of here? This has been a very fulfilling conversation for me.
No, same here. And, you know, I say a prayer before I came on and said, hey, thank you for the opportunity and putting me in contact with Pete. I'm really looking forward to this. Please help me help one person out there. And that's been the mantra since day one, is that, you know, our conversations that will help one person. I'm getting a little greedier these days. Like, things are growing. We want to help more than one. You know, like, I know your message is so huge with your platform and sharing your story so openly. You know, I've like this term, Recover Out Loud. I didn't know that term existed until I started the podcast and the community of people like yourself and people like Jason that put us in touch with each other. Just, they're incredible, incredible people. And so if there's one thing I want to, you know, leave, it's pretty simple. Like, you're not alone and you can completely change your life. It's really that simple. It's not easy. It's hard sometimes, but it is simple. Like, I didn't understand that term either, but now I understand that term. Like, an amazing life. And then there's this just beautiful umbrella of health and wellness and maybe prosperity, whatever your dreams are that are on the other side of this. I believe this in the bottom of my heart. And so if you and I talking about this, I'll do this every single day, and it helps one person. Like, I know you'll do the same thing. We'll do it every day. You
mentioned simple, not easy. What was harder, getting sober or being a fucking Jets fan?
Being a Jets fan, it's all in the mind. Like, I've come to terms that I must love pain somewhere. I must just love it. I must yearn for it. So,
hey, I got a feeling I want to see. I love stars. I love interesting people. So I want to see the Jets do well. I want to see Aaron Rodgers do well. Joe Douglas. I went to the University of Richmond. He was on the football team with me there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course I'm pulling for Joe. I got a feeling that the Jets have I think it's going to be a good year. I hope so, at least.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think Joe Douglas has done a great job. I mean, a great job. I know the record doesn't, show it, but look at the roster he's got right now. I think he's done a great, great job. And I'll just say this, and all my friends know this, every year, I'm like, they're going to the AFC Championship game. And then I'll tell them why. And it's a pretty compelling argument. Like, every single year. Last year was a lock, like number top 5 defense, but they're on the field more than anybody in the whole league. What happened? We were a 3-and-out machine. What's going to happen? We're a 3-and-out machine. What happens if, we actually can have a few drives and have this defense rested? This year, I'm like, I think last year did it to me. Like, I think they finally got me. I'm like, the Jets are going to happen. The Jets are going to be the Jets. Yeah. And so it's kind of a reverse psychology, right, Pete? Like, and by the way, when they do really well this year, I'm going to have to just say they're not going to do well every single year from here on in. So
I'm going to be in touch with you about talking Jets in the NFL, dude. Gary, you're the man, really. I really enjoyed chatting with you, dude.
Oh, Pete, right back at you, man. I'll do this anytime with you. And we're going to have you on the Begin Again podcast as soon as possible, too. I'd love to have you on.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.